So we are here now for the Black Friday Trends panel, one that I've been very excited for. Rob Stott, editorial director at Dealerscope. We cover the consumer electronics retail industry and trends in this space. And a constant resource in my work has been Gap Intelligence and the work that you guys do. So I am thrilled to be sitting up here with a couple of market analysts from Gap. So Scott, I'll start on the end. Scott Peterson, who I know very well, covers the voice assistant, speakers, and smartphones for Gap. We got next to him Dustin Downs, who does notebooks, desktops for Gap. And then Jason Berry right next to me. You cover tablets and wearables. So guys, I'll let you do a little intro of yourselves, but first of all, thank you for joining us and being here and taking time away from sunny San Diego to be in rainy New York today. So.
Yeah, well, thanks again for the opportunity, Rob. We're excited to be here too. And like Rob said, Gap Intelligence is based in San Diego. And we've been in business for about 16 years now. And essentially what we focus on are the 4 Ps of marketing, if you remember: pricing, promotions, placements, and products. And essentially what we like to really bill ourselves as is the eyes and ears for our clients in the channel, both retail and online. So essentially, as a smartphone analyst, my job here is to report every price of every smartphone at every single store, at every carrier, in-store and online, every single week, and then basically wake up next week and do that all over again. So over time, we're able to develop trends, really have a great view of the cross-channel market and the landscape of the electronics, I guess. And Gap Intelligence, we're category-specific analysts up here, but Gap Intelligence, I think we track about 35 unique product categories now.
That's a lot. That sounds about right.
Yeah, so company got started with home printing. So think of like ink and paper and actually inkjet print hardware. And then from there, we've just expanded across product categories. Appliances is now a humongous hub at Gap Intelligence.
And one of the funny stories I like to tell specifically about Scott is that when I met him, he was covering the digital camera market. And funny enough, we're here a few years later, smartphones instead of digital cameras. I guess that, a little impact there, a little irony in that, but.
Absolutely. So I've been with Gap personally since about 2010. And during that time, I've seen the evolution of the market. I've seen the trends change and shift. And I think that's really what I get a lot of enjoyment about with my job, is really kind of overseeing the long-term evolution on a lot of the CE categories. So I myself do smartphones and voice assistant speakers, and I'm joined on stage here with my 2 counterparts.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Dustin Downs. I'm the category analyst for notebooks and desktop PCs. I've been with Gap Intelligence now for about 5 years, and I actually started off with Scott on the digital camera side when I first started. But I've been focused solely on PCs for the last 4 years. I'm an avid gamer myself, so I'm really excited to see how that segment has been impacting my categories.
Yeah, my name is Jason Berry. Like you said, I cover both tablets and wearables, as well as our newest category, which is headphones. And we're just really excited to be here today. We're going to be talking about some of the trends that we're seeing in our industry that really carry across a majority of our categories, talk about some similarities, some differences, and also tie a lot of this into Black Friday as well.
For sure. And I know the products that, you're looking at what you guys cover are some of the hottest and maybe most covered in this space. So it'll be interesting to hear what you guys have to say. And we're going to start right there with those pricing trends. What are you guys seeing in your respective categories, as it relates to pricing or around those products, and how that might play out as we go into the holiday season?
Yeah, very cool. So I'll start here. Smartphones, pretty big category. And we've actually been seeing a lot and hearing a lot of this global slowdown. So the years of old school hockey stick growth in the smartphone industry are over. And in the US market, which is what Gap is specifically focused on, we're still sort of seeing single-digit growth. But a lot of that just has to do with what we're actually monitoring, which is retail channel and online channel product assortments. So to some degree, I think the swelling of the smartphone shelf almost indicates a slowdown in sales as older models are kind of lingering. And we've especially been hearing a lot about the elongating consumer ownership cycles with smartphones, especially as these escalate in price. And that's actually one of the most interesting trends that I've seen just over the course of this year is the growth in premium. I mean, that $1,000 and up segment is definitely the fastest growing segment of the smartphone industry.
Thanks, Apple.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, though, if we rewind the clock about like 4 years ago, 60% of that shelf is still priced $600 and up. But that $600 and up segment now has evolved to sort of include extremely premium items. And the neat thing that's happening now is a lot of brands are, what this is doing is kind of putting the squeeze on the mid-range price tiers, and a lot of brands now are introducing sort of counterpart models to their flagships. So I like to use the term junior flagships. And this specifically, I want to call out Google with their recent launch of the Pixel A generation. And these models are exactly targeted in that mid-range sector of the market that is a little bit underserved. And I think they're really hitting where the big guys are kind of their weakest, which is in those mid-range prices. As Samsung and Apple kind of rise up, it's creating opportunity for some brands to kind of go in and capitalize on that. One of the fun facts about that, and why I really love Google's strategic nature in this mid-range, is only about 5% of Samsung's attention is placed on these mid-range devices. And Apple, it's even lower. It's about 3%. So you got to think, these are humongous brands that have big marketing budgets, and they're out there touting the high dollar value items, and that is giving some opportunity, especially as we head into the remainder of the year for those mid-range items.
Specifically looking at Apple, you think about that mid-range, basically what it seems like they do is they keep those older flagships around longer and cut the prices there, hoping that maybe someone that's not looking for the flagship right now, that could potentially serve that mid-range level without officially launching a mid-range type phone.
Yeah, and for Black Friday specifically, that has historically been a budget play. It's been mostly prepaid items because you got that low sticker price, you got that hot instant savings. But the last couple years, postpaid has actually taken up a much larger share of the overall Black Friday activity. And I expect that trend again to continue this year. And what these vendors are using to sort of spur sales are very lucrative BOGO offers, the buy one, get one free. And you guys are going to see a lot of these flagship or junior flagship models marketed as free items coming into the holidays with certain asterisks and stipulations on how you buy it.
Gotcha.
A lot of those trends that Scott just talked about are something that we're seeing with tablets as well. And keeping it on Apple, we do see the same generational increase, especially with the iPad Pros generation over generation. And the premium is kind of lifting on these devices, whereas the iPad is really staying there at that $329 price point. And as with smartphones, what that is doing is opening that gap for other manufacturers to come in and really attack that gap in Apple's product lineup. An example of this would be the Samsung Galaxy S5e, which is the essential version. I believe it's the same nomenclature that they use with the smartphones.
S10e is their junior flagship, yeah, exactly.
S10e. When you're looking at tablet pricing, though, you can't really talk about just pricing without acknowledging the titan of a tablet that is the standard iPad sitting at $329. So an example of these other manufacturers going for weaknesses in Apple's lineup is Amazon going with the budget, shelling out the tablet to the point where they can put the Amazon product ecosystem in your face. You see this in Black Friday when you'll walk into a Best Buy, there's a bin with buy one, get one free of these Fire tablets. With the S5e, with the Samsung tablet, what they did, the S4, the previous generation, this was their flagship, and it was right under the iPad Pros. So it was $699 compared to the iPad Pros. The new one comes in at $399, which is just above the standard iPad. So this is interesting from a consumer psychology perspective. When you're sitting there and you're comparing the Samsung tablet to the Apple tablet, when you're looking at the old one that was right under the iPads, you're questioning, is the loss of features worth the savings? Now with the new one right above the standard iPad, you're looking at, are the additional features justifying the premium? And I think consumers really want features. They want a better tablet, so it's a very subtle difference, but I really like the $399 pricing of that new tablet.
From the Black Friday packages perspective, when you see in the smartphone end, as Scott mentions here, there's bundles, there's these buy one, get ones. What are they doing from the tablet perspective? Is it similar? How do they differ?
We see BOGOs rarely with the lower margin Amazon ones. Like I said, they will bundle those buy one, get one, but with the bundles they're looking like, and this is huge in Black Friday, and as we switch more to this 2-in-1 and detachable, is a lot of these 2-in-1s don't even come with the keyboard, and so you'll see Microsoft bundle the Folio keyboard with the device. So that's something we'll see this Black Friday as well.
So adding on accessories.
A mice, things like that.
Gotcha. Dustin?
Yeah, and when talking about premium, that's definitely the biggest price band trend that we've seen with notebooks. And what's interesting, it's mainly coming from the consumer-oriented model. So again, a lot more Windows competition for for Apple. And so with that, you see the strengthening of a lot of premium product portfolios like the Dell XPS, the HP Spectre. And now when you look at the retail shelf, so what's actually available out there, these premium devices are comprising well over a quarter of what's actually in store. And so it's interesting to talk about kind of like what is driving this growth in premium. So these are devices, $1,000 and above. And there's been talk around, increased product life cycle, but then also the end of smartphone contract pricing a couple years ago, and that created kind of this awareness of how much these devices are actually worth up front. But I think a really important component is the idea that these devices are now being used across people's daily lives. So they're taking them to school, they're taking them to work during the day, they're bringing them home at night to watch Netflix, and then maybe they're gaming on them on the weekends. And so I think it's this kind of all-in-one nature that's really helping to justify these premium price points. But in terms of Black Friday, even though these are now taking up this, huge chunk of the shelf, what we're still seeing front and center is the budget notebooks. We're still seeing those $199 budget Windows or Chromebooks on the front of Black Friday circulars with those 50% discounts, giving them the really attractive, door-busting $99 price tags. And that kind of summarizes the Black Friday promotional activity for notebooks. It's just really aggressive instant savings. We don't see the type of bundling or free gift cards or anything like that like we see in other CE categories. It's just instant savings. And that's the way it's been for years now.
Yeah, I just want to say we're in stores every week too, just as analysts. And so I love seeing the reduced crowds each year on Black Friday, and which is definitely indicative of sort of omni-channel and retailers giving us a lot more options when to actually shop. But the people that we see every year still camped out in front of Best Buy are shopping for that notebook that Dustin just mentioned. That's the deal they're going for.
Well, you mentioned that too, the changing nature of shopping on Black Friday and how more people are in store, more people are not going in store than would be in years past. Does that impact, the pricing scale across your product categories? Is there a big difference between what you'll see promotional-wise or offer-wise in store as opposed to online, or is there more of that blending as retailers and manufacturers go that omni-channel route?
I mean, there's still a lot of blending because we've talked about how it's still such a big part of tradition for a lot of families, is that after Thanksgiving, they're looking at all the ads that are coming out, and then they're, going either after Thanksgiving dinner or in the morning. So I think there's still, the store aspect is still so big because of tradition, but online is still, coming in as a bigger part every year.
We did see some pretty neat stuff last year where, just off the top of my head, a couple chains, like I remember Office Depot was doing a special in-store only thing to drive foot traffic. So that would be one difference, but in general, omni-channel is the way to go. And what we really saw is Black Friday became really just the month of November / all bleeding into December even. And it really just shows that retailers are getting the message that showing consumers the deals when they want to shop and where they want to shop is really the strategy.
And you hit on that too, the earlier start of these promotions and stuff. How far back is too far back to still call this Black Friday? We've heard the term Black Month. These things happen now at the end of October. I've seen promotions get started. The hype around the flyers coming out, starts in September. So, what's the deal with how early the shift is coming with how these promotions start?
Seems to get earlier and earlier every single year. And to that point, I think adding a little bit of spice to Black Friday itself, like the in-store only, come in-store and get this special deal, are still going to be the tactics that the merchants are going to use, especially this year, because folks are going to be on their mobile phones, they're going to be shopping online at all hours and earlier than ever.
So slightly unrelated, and kind of thought about this, want to peel back the layers of Gap maybe. Your products kind of, you mentioned it here, 2-in-1s, laptops and tablets, they kind of blend. We're seeing foldable phones, they kind of, they're these small phones that are now opening up into tablet-sized things. Any competition internally about how you cover those, or is it still a very clearly defined segment?
I mean, there's been some heated debates when these products come out that seem to blur the lines, and it's like, we kind of try to develop very rigid, structured systems. But then again, things will come out where it's like, well, that's kind of, going in. So we've had some heated debates, but normally you find a way to agree upon how we categorize them.
I remember the first time I saw the Samsung Galaxy Fold come across my newsfeed, I was excited for this new tablet. That one of the most exciting form factor changes.
Scott's like, hold on a minute.
What's this new tablet that I could cover? Is this a tablet that folds into a smartphone?
And I was just excited to see a smartphone that folded into a tablet.
So I think that really highlights one of the things with these new form factors being introduced is that a lot of people really think that they're differentiators, and this foldable form factor is coming out, and it's this whole new category. When really I look at it much more of like a homogenizer, where it's blurring the lines between what is a tablet, what is a smartphone, and what is a notebook. We see this with other categories as well, even in wearables, which I track. We see that the Fitbit Charge 3, these activity trackers, have 90% of the functionality of a smartwatch. So that's blurring a lot as well. I think a cool thing that's going to come from these form factor changes is that even from a manufacturer perspective, you're going to be looking at not how can I build a better notebook or how can I build a better tablet. You're going to be coming at it from the angle of what does the optimal mobile computing experience look like.
Right. That kind of gets to the rest of you too. I mean, there's changing form factors across every category, as we've seen, of late, and whether that's foldables, whether that's even some of the internals, as things like 5G start to roll out. So, what else can you guys add to that?
I mean, I guess continuing on kind of like the foldable topic. So we've seen recently brands like Lenovo and Asus announce these dual screen foldable laptop notebook concepts. But the thing is, we've already seen products before hit the market that kind of rely on you typing on a flat surface. And really the feedback has been that people still don't like doing a majority of their typing on a flat surface. And I think that's evident with all the, the keyboard peripherals that are available with tablets. So there have been some vendors putting out products now more recently that kind of want to take the best of both worlds and still introduce kind of a dual screen concept. You have Asus with their screen pad, so that took out the traditional touchpad, put in essentially almost like a smartphone display there for multitasking. HP Omen in their, I think it's X2S, was a gaming notebook that took that screen, moved it to the top of the keyboard, again for multitasking, but also incorporating certain elements of gaming, like being able to enhance your mini map and put it on the top of the keyboard there. And most recently, Asus announced their ZenBook Duo line. So it expanded their screen pad concept, putting a full width display at the top of their keyboard for a lot of different multitasking. But the question still kind of remains is, are we going to actually see these products hit the retail shelf? Asus has been pretty slow to actually place their flagship models in national retailers. So I wouldn't really expect these products to hit shelf by the end of this year, maybe not even by this time next year. But really, I'm kind of most excited about those products that are looking to blend innovation with practicality, as opposed to the models that are really just kind of looking to claim titles like World's First or First to Market.
Oh, that's huge. And we saw a lot of that. Again, foldable smartphones, definitely a headline grabber this year. We saw at CES, FlexPi gave the U.S. market a view of what a foldable smartphone could be. We've seen a couple of Chinese brands launch these abroad, and Samsung is doing it here at home in the U.S., but not very well. So AT&T just canceled their pre-orders on that this morning as well.
Wow.
And kind of like what Dustin's saying, I think this is more of a solution in search of a problem, and really the benefit of launching all these right now is just being that first to market, to have that gold star on your badge. But it's not exactly a reality just yet for consumers, and as a result, I don't think that's going to really define the landscape for Q4 or even Black Friday ahead.
This is getting maybe away from pricing, but what do you feel as you've seen more of these foldables get introduced? Is it something that can take hold? I know Apple has some patents floating out there and things like that. So will it take a company, a smartphone maker like them, getting to this market to really make it stick?
I have no doubt in my mind that this form factor will be the reality in the future. I just think right now we're rushing. The use case and applications aren't really quite here yet, and it's mostly just to flex your technology muscles and have sort of that halo product over your portfolio of other devices.
And that's a nice segue to the next question, that we had discussed, and that's how media applications are kind of defining your different spaces and categories that you guys cover. So to that end, toss it up to whoever wants to take it first about how media is impacting your segment.
I'll go ahead and grab that one because the application and the use case really defines the tablet category in particular. Like we were mentioning with the Amazon tablets earlier, you're using these for media streaming. So they have the components that'll let you get that 4K HD video and pretty much nothing else. On the other side, we have the productivity tools like the Microsoft lineup, the 2-in-1 detachables, and the iPad Pros. With the iPad Pros, these are priced, we were talking about that price creep, they're upwards of $1,000 now. The problem with that, at least historically, has been that if your laptop dies or something and you're looking to find a replacement product and you're spending $1,000 on a tablet, you need that to be able to function as really your sole computing device. Now, the iPad Pros were limited. They were running that iOS mobile operating system, the same one that your iPhone was running, and that's missing things like a traditional file system, mouse support, which is a hindrance if you're doing some creative work, if you're working in spreadsheets. Now, Worldwide Developer Conference 2019 comes along, and lo and behold, they announce iPad OS. So this really fixes a lot of the problems because what do they reveal? They reveal external mouse support. They reveal a more traditional file sharing system with searchability and a little more metadata. And that really pushes the gap that this can be your sole computing device. I know Apple had this one advertisement, I believe it ran during the Super Bowl last year, and it was a little girl running around with her iPad, and then her mom says, "Hey, what are you doing with that computer?" And she says, "What computer?" Because they're really pushing it as this tablet form factor. I think this year with iPad OS around Black Friday, you're really going to see a big push that these are computers now. So what that's going to look like on shelf is Apple will do this keyboard folio bundle. I'm a big fan of doing not only the bundle, but also an instant savings attached because that upsells the additional hardware, so the manufacturer is winning. The consumer is winning. They're seeing that big red price, the big discount that they're searching for in store, and it's just a win all around.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously with notebooks and desktops, gaming is a huge use case. And without even, trying to name drop Fortnite, everyone can see how much gaming has infiltrated the mainstream, from esports to live game streaming. And personally, I'm really excited about the opportunities for innovation within that segment. So, I mean, in terms of, not only features and functionality, but performance. So I was at E3 earlier this week, and it's interesting that there's always all this focus on the gaming consoles. The next-gen consoles are going to be coming out. But when you think about it, gaming desktops right now are as capable in performance as these next-gen consoles that haven't even come out yet. And on the other end of the spectrum, the emergence of budget gaming notebooks at CES a couple years ago have now put these devices in more people's hands than ever before. And it's kind of interesting, like, when we're talking about this, Black Friday is always going to have an uptick in activity with gaming devices, but I'm actually more interested in the back-to-school season. So last year at Best Buy, they were pushing gaming really hard. They came out with one of my favorite ad slogans, and it was, "Tell your parents it's for school." And I mean, I was in stores myself, seeing kids trying to convince their parents to buy these notebooks. The store associate would be over there, be like, "Oh, it's got a great, processor, RAM, storage. It's a great gaming notebook." And the parent would be like, "What? Like, this whole time I thought it was for school." But it makes sense. I mean, they were pushing these devices as productivity tools. But if a device can game, it can certainly do everything else. And again, I think that ties into the idea of notebooks now serving as these all-in-one devices. They're used for productivity, they're used for entertainment, and they're used for gaming now as that third pillar, really holding up the category.
Yeah, gaming is definitely something that's impacting smartphones as well. And I am going to name drop Fortnite because when Samsung launched their Note last year, this was a huge strategic partnership where they decided to go with Fortnite. They launched some exclusive skins and some goodies that only Note users could buy. And this is a complete 180 if you really think about how Samsung has historically positioned those Note devices. Big screen, big stylus, big RAM. It was all about business. It was all about productivity. And they really took that back to the drawing board and said, "Hey, listen, we can game on this thing as well." And we saw Samsung running ads that was very, very heavily focused on that aspirational ability to be a better gamer with this phone. I know that everyone else took notice because Apple launched a competing ad that has a person kind of walking through the street and the world comes a video game around them, telling me that, whoa, I can game on this fancy iPhone now as well. And this has actually launched sort of a new niche of the market, which are gaming smartphones. There's handsets that are specifically designed for gaming. A couple of Chinese vendors are doing this, and including Razer here in the US. Yeah, there's a Razer phone and a Razer phone 2 now that capitalize on this. And the flagship sort of headlining feature of those is the refresh rates of the screens. So I'm going to continue to expect to see that spec being kind of advertised as a differentiator as we head into the end of this year.
A phone that, by the way, talking about the Razer phone, plugs into a laptop that becomes the mouse pad, trackpad for the laptop. So again, blurring these lines between spaces. So just all kinds of craziness happening in the tech world. But you mentioned, Dustin, the back to school. And that brings up a point that, around that time, that's right now, obviously, going on. We're only in June and kids are just getting out of school. Crazy to think about already sending them back, but here we are, and that's how the retail landscape works. And that also, we're right around the corner from another Amazon Prime Day coming, so this sort of Black Friday of the summer. So, question for you guys, what impacts are you seeing of these sort of midsummer holiday, promotional trends and things like that? And then to follow up on that, is there such thing, could there be fatigue to the consumer, with all these promotions happening throughout the year? Like, why wait for Black Friday, in the fall, if I got Black Friday in the summer? Is there too much, I guess?
I'll go ahead and field that. I feel like there's never quite sales fatigue. You never go in and see a huge discount and you're
I've had enough of this.
You're going to buy an iPad.
Another sale.
You're going to buy an iPad at 50% off. You're not quite bummed. What I will say though is that if you were looking, let's say, for an iPad and you go in and it's 50% off and you know that these happen every other month, you might pass on that sale. Whereas before, when it was just Prime Day or it was just back to school and then maybe Black Friday, you were probably going to jump on that opportunity. So it decreases the importance of each individual sale. I don't think you'll ever get fatigued of sales, but by decreasing the importance of the individual sales, you might see less lift when you do run these promotions.
And I think that there has always been this kind of misconception that Black Friday is the one day of the year to buy electronics. So I'm going to wait all year and then I'm going to get the hottest deal. But I think with all these emerging, midsummer programs and all these kind of flash deals that are going on, I think that misconception is fading now.
Yeah, and just the phenomenon of Black Friday elongating into sort of a seasonal affair now goes to prove that. And even Prime Day is really interesting as well, too. And just tracking the variety of merchants that we track, we see the direct responses from Best Buy, from Target, from Walmart to Amazon's action. And a lot of times, these retailers, which have a brick and mortar presence, are going to be doing something extra special to drive traffic or to try to differentiate themselves away from Amazon. And I know Prime Day got a huge or negative connotation the first couple rounds because it was kind of like a garage sale. It was deals consumers didn't really care about. So I'm actually excited to see Prime Day this year because not only is Amazon, I think, going to be showing us gadgets that we actually want deals on, but this is spurring kind of a midsummer phenomenon from a lot of retailers and kind of reinvigorating that traditional slump in the mid-year.
And I know when you think about Black Friday, if I were to pick one electronic item, one category in this space, the TV is what comes to mind, as being the biggest discounted product on that day. So to each of your categories, is there a specific time, maybe giving away a little information to consumers here, when to shop for your specific categories?
Just in general with smartphones, I would educate or I would kind of advise shoppers to pay attention to the launch cycles because typically once the new version launches, like you mentioned, Apple, the immediate $100 instant savings or price reduction off the past generation. So holding out for the launch of a successor could be a good strategy for deal seeking. Otherwise, we do see the largest discounts happening in Q4 and Black Friday. I say in Q4 because, again, Black Friday is a seasonal thing now. And for smartphones, what we saw is a lot of a shift away from free gifts and sort of things that consumers maybe didn't want to returning money in people's wallets because phones are expensive. So I expect gift cards and sort of high-value trade-ins being the real driver of sales this season. And gift cards, if you think about it, are a wonderful strategy, too, because I buy something today, you're going to give me last year the values increased from $300 to $400 gift cards on smartphones for Black Friday. So I'm kind of expecting them to be right around that 400 threshold again this year. And this is, basically Best Buy and Target are giving you money to shop at a later date, which is just kind of job security for them at this point, yeah.
Yeah, aside from the launch cycles, for notebooks, really, it's almost not as much about seasonality as like the weekly cadence. So if you walk into Best Buy and you see a notebook you like and it's not on sale, give it a week. And maybe give it 2 or 3 weeks, because when you look at kind of how all these vendors are promoting their devices, there's a lot of on and off again kind of weekly differences. So I would say that you kind of keep an eye on it, give it 3 weeks, and you'll probably find a good sale within those 3 weeks.
For both of the categories that I track, all three actually, with tablets and wearables, when I first began tracking the categories, I figured Black Friday would be that day to get whatever it is that you were looking for. What we've seen over at least the last 2 years has actually been the Christmas circular and the Christmas time shopping really get the deepest cuts. The companies have their November sales data in, they're at the end of the year, they're trying to make that end of year Q4 push. And I think that's actually when we see the steepest discounting for tablets and wearables.
Interesting. And appreciate that. So, I guess we have we're talking about Q4, right? So it would be holiday time, and I know there's something you guys brought up that you wanted to bring up, and that makes sense to talk about because we're talking about the Christmas season. And I know it's a huge internal debate at Gap. And obviously you can't talk about Christmas, at least in some regards, without talking about Die Hard. So tell me about what's going on here on stage, the dynamic of whether Die Hard is a Christmas movie or not.
Well, like you said, it comes up. It's been many bridges have been burned and friendships lost over this great debate. I'm saying that Die Hard, it takes place at a Christmas party. I agree.
It's a holiday party.
That's in December.
Yeah. It's in December.
It's a Christmas movie.
So, now, I'm a guy who watches Gremlins every year for Christmas, which is definitely not a traditional Christmas movie. But recently, after doing lots of research, I've actually turned around and changed my mind to say that Die Hard is not a Christmas movie. Now, before I start a riot here, I think when you look at a Christmas movie, it has to have 2 concepts. One, obviously, has to take place around Christmas. But 2, it has to have some kind of Christmas theme going on. It has, around family or togetherness, and Die Hard doesn't have that. I think you have to have the 2 elements, and the movie does. It's a great movie. It's a classic. I love it, but I don't think it's a Christmas movie.
A lot of hard work put into this.
Yeah. I spent most of my time obviously studying Die Hard.
I mean, for me, it's a Christmas movie. It's not Christmas until you're dropping Hans Gruber off of the Nakatomi Tower, right?
Oh, that's awesome. So I know we're a little early. You guys opposed to opening it up to a couple questions?
I think that would be great, actually. Yeah.
Any question? Yeah, so just to repeat the question, asking basically, because of who your customers are, whether that's the dads and grads around the second week of July and, the back to school shopping season, which I know, Dustin, you talked on a little bit. But what you guys are seeing as far as the importance of that time frame, that second and third week of July.
So I will say, at least with PCs, we do see an uptick. If you're looking at average percent discount, we do see an uptick in the aggressiveness pretty much every week of some kind of major holiday. President's Day, Memorial Day, the dads and grad season, or so Father's Day, Mother's Day. But when you look at it, it's not enough for us, drive all these huge sales. There is a more discounting around these times. So I would say, at least with every kind of major holiday throughout the spring and summer season, we do see an uptick in savings.
Same across the board for you guys?
Not so much tablets, and I know you're PC centric, but for wearables, I do see that July uptick. I attribute that to summer, like kind of just seasonality, getting outside with your Fitbit. They'll do a big push. Tablets, not so much, but wearables definitely.
Yeah, I mean, dads and grads for sure for smartphones. Again, I'm going to say BOGO because it's buy one and get your grad another one kind of thing. So, and I mentioned earlier just about the influence that Amazon is now having on this season and kind of really putting the spurs on a lot of other merchants to drive up those discounts in that mid-year period. It definitely varies across categories too. I mean, in the beginning we talked about digital cameras, and I watched digital cameras become a dads and grads thing, a Mother's Day thing. It was an every season thing, and that just faded and faded away as other CE gained more consumer attention. Cameras weren't that in-demand gadget for Father's Day anymore, and it's pivoting to, like Jason said, wearables too, and the seasonality, just getting out there in the summertime.
I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to look at our data, but I'd be interested to see by operating system for PCs. I'm thinking Chromebooks and their dominance in education. I would be interested to see what those discounts are looking like for Chromebooks in this, right where you're talking about this, exactly like that.
Awesome. Any other questions out of the audience?
I'm Odalis, and I'm a proud user of Gap. I have several categories that are covered. I highly encourage anyone that's interested in more information to please reach out to them directly. They're awesome. Deirdre is the TV analyst, and she's not only passionate, but so extremely knowledgeable. I work with most of the individuals here, and I'm so happy to be here. And there was one thing that I had on my list. I don't know if Gap wants to kind of talk a little bit about the various categories that you cover, or maybe whoever's interested here could maybe approach them, because there's so much more than what was talked about here. And thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that.
And my
plug,
regards.
Odalis. Yeah. Well, that's a great testimonial, and yeah, I definitely encourage you to follow up with us after the show. Odalis is someone who works directly with our televisions analysts on a daily basis, should I say?
Awesome.
Yeah, so I mentioned, I believe our category count's right at about 35 now. Jason is helming headphones as our newest addition. Last year it was vacuum cleaners, so think robots. Previously we added voice assistant speakers, wrist wearables, and a lot of the way Gap evolves, and we have very scalable growth. We basically take what we do for one category, and if someone asks for it, we kind of grow another category and repeat those same processes. So it's the in-store tracking, it's the online tracking across a panel of merchants. And there's probably about 10 appliance categories. We're really print heavy. What's another CE? I mean, we're mostly the CE computing kind of team, is why the three of us are assembled here.
You kind of touched on it too at the beginning, and we'll kind of use this to wrap up, but explain a little bit about what that process looks like to collect that information. What are you guys actively doing to ensure that you're properly, addressing what these promotions look like throughout the year?
Scott, you're on a roll. So.
I'm on a roll, thank you. So it's very much... let me see, how can I start? So it's a weekly process, it's a weekly cadence. And essentially what we do is we're crawling a variety of websites that's determined by the category specific panel, basically. So each week we are scraping the web to get the .com price. And we also have about a dozen or so regions across the country where we have data collectors, physical humans that are armed with our app that go into the stores, and they're able to key in price changes, take pictures of promotions, shelves, end caps, things like that. They beam it all back to us in San Diego, and probably I'd say on Thursday of every week, we're able to finalize that week's worth of retail data. We're able to finalize that week's worth of e-commerce data. And then come Sunday, we collect Sunday circulars and all the weekend ads like that, and we'll publish a report every Monday. So essentially, every single Monday, we are releasing a report that has everything that happened last week, plus a preview of what's to come in the form of the Sunday ads.
Awesome. Well, Justin, Jason, Dustin, and Scott.
Happens at work all the time.
I do that all the time. It's like a fusion, yeah.
Appreciate you guys coming out again from San Diego and joining us, and thank you very much. This was
Thank you,
awesome.
Rob.
Thanks,
Rob.
us.
Cool. Thank you.